I want to talk a little bit about the HDR mode in the Canon T4i. The HDR mode is the last mode on the dial, and it says combines 3 shots at 3 exposures, improves highlight/shadow detail. Alright, let's take a step back and talk about what HDR is. It's super popular right now, you've probably heard it, it's even in the iPhone. HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. And it is the process where you take a series of images, all exposed differently, usually starting underexposed through normal exposure and then overexposed, and you sandwich those together and get details all out of all of the pieces. A common example is think of a picture where you have the sky and a subject that is not directly lit by the sun currently. Maybe they're in the shade. That's a huge dynamic range in that image. You have a very bright sky and you probably have a very dark person in the shadows. Not quite ninja-like, but similar. So, what you would do if you were taking an HDR, or what the camera does if you ask it to take an HDR in HDR mode, is it underexposes a picture. That gets nice detail out of the sky. Then it takes a picture at normal exposure, uses that for all of the rest, and then it takes a picture that is slightly overexposed, which gets a nice detail out of the shadow area. And then it sandwiches this together, takes the one where you can actually see the sky, takes the one where you can actually see the person in the shadow, and of course takes the middle one, puts them all together, and you have an expanded dynamic range in your image. The shadows, the dark to the light, is much greater than if you'd just taken one shot right in the camera. The iPhone has this. There are lots of cameras that have this currently. The Sony A65 that I reviewed had a very nice mode that I was really happy with how it worked. Not as excited about how it works on the T4i. What it does is what I just read to you. It takes 3 shots in quick succession: underexposed, middle exposure, overexposed. So you need to watch out and make sure you're not moving a whole lot and your subject isn't moving a whole lot. I've just been using it around a little bit, a couple test shots. I'm going to run through these now, but I also please click the link below to go look at them at your leisure, not while I'm talking, so you can kind of really study and see the differences. There are certainly some uses to this, and it does make some improvements in some photos. It can also make some unimprovements in some photos. So there are places where it's useful and other places where it's not. The first image that we're going to look at here is a normal image of a clump of flowers on a butterfly bush. This was just shot normal in P mode, nothing too fancy. And then the next shot is the HDR mode. So let me go back real quick and forward again. You can see, or you should be able to see, that there is a good bit more light on the underside of those leaves. And in general, the overall exposure of the image is more even. And it did a fairly nice job here, even though that there was some movement. Next is a little bit trickier. We have this tree and kind of shrubbery backlit against the sky. Basically, it's a silhouette that the sky is so bright. And we look at the HDR mode, and you can see that there is some green coming out of the leaves down there below. Here we have my mostly willing subject standing still for a normal shot, no HDR, and then I switched to HDR mode, and you can see here I didn't have image stabilization on either. I don't think it would have made a whole lot of difference in this case because both myself and the subject are moving very slightly, and if we zoom in on the glasses, we can see that there is some ghosting or artifacting there where all 3 images didn't quite line up exactly. So that's definitely a downside and something that you need to watch out for. We got just 2 more pairs of images to look at here. Again, another set of leaves. The sun was shining directly through this normal mode. Now we look at HDR, and you can see that you do have a bit more image in there. You might also notice, I'm going to go back and then forward, that the leaves move towards you a little bit in the HDR mode. What it does to make sure that it can line up everything is it crops the image slightly and then blows it back up to remain the same dimensions that all the 18 megapixel images are. So that's a little bit of a downside, not a huge one, but you're losing a little bit of detail. You also can't do HDR mode in RAW, and in fact, when you're in this HDR mode on the T4i, you pretty much lose the ability to do any settings other than whether or not you want to do single shoot or continuous mode or self-timer if you wanted to do a self-timer of yourself and things of that sort. All other options, your focus points, white balance, none of those you can't change any of those when you're in the HDR mode. Last image that we're going to look at here is, again, more leaves, backlit. This is obviously the most challenging for a camera when it's exposing against a very bright sky, and then in HDR mode you can see that it looks a little bit better. So I'll throw up some more samples. These are just a couple, but I'll put up some more samples. Again, click the link below to see lots more. The bottom line, don't buy this camera for the HDR mode, but it can be useful in some limited circumstances. So, hope this was helpful. I'll have lots more reviews, lots more information about the T4i coming, including what do these other modes do and are they worth using? And that stuff will be all up soon. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching.